Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Vandy247 Live. I'm your host, Billy Derrick. We are talking all things Vanderbilt basketball again today after a disappointing loss on Saturday to Oklahoma in Norman. We'll talk all about that today. We'll look ahead to Tuesday night's matchup with Florida in Gainesville. A couple of football notes as well, with a little bit of recruiting going on as well. But we do have a special guest. Before we get to him, though, this show brought to you by The Wash House with our basketball coverage. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Well, let the laundry professionals at The Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 convenient locations in Nashville. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Well, we're talking all things Vandy basketball today, and we got a special guest. It is Mr. David Cobb from CBS Sports, college basketball, college football writer. David, how you doing?
Hey, Billy, I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me and putting up with my casual Monday attire here. I had a big weekend up at CBS Sports HQ. I had to have on a jacket and a tie and all that, so I'm rocking casual here on Monday.
Yeah, I feel like the sports writer feel. It's like, you could write in whatever you want, but you got to go on TV, keep the shorts on, maybe throw on the jacket.
Yeah, I had jeans on underneath my tie and my jacket on the set. You couldn't tell, but no, this is more my natural condition here. The podcast vibe is more laid back, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you hopping on, and I remember you being at the Kentucky-Tennessee games for Vanderbilt, and we'll get into that. I also want to get into a little bit of football as well with some people who may not realize you cover college football as well. So we'll touch on some football towards the end. But let's start with this Vandy basketball team. And you've been a basketball guy, covered the SEC. You've been in Knoxville as well, covering Tennessee as well. But with this Vanderbilt team, before we get into anything that's happened this season, did you see any of this coming from this team with Mark Byington? I think a lot of us thought it would be better this year, but you didn't know how the transfers would mesh. You didn't know how they would fit together. How much of this did you expect from this team? Not that they've blown the roof off or anything, but I think they've been better than a lot of people have expected.
Yeah, no, I didn't see it coming. They've been far, far better than what I anticipated. What I liked about the roster that Mark Byington constructed, and still do like, is that a lot of these players have multiple seasons of eligibility who he brought in. It wasn't just that he went out and got the best guys that he could find, and this is going to be it for them. There's several of these players who are in the rotation can come back next season as well. Now, obviously, in the portal era, you never know, but at least the idea that you could have a returning nucleus next season, I thought year 2 might be when we saw Vanderbilt make substantive strides and maybe push for an NCAA tournament bid. But the fact that they're doing it in year 1 in this league, with the SEC being as tough or tougher than it ever has been, that's really impressive. So you just have to give a massive salute to Mark Byington and that staff for being able to ID the guys who would come in and fit and gel and mesh and create what has been a team that's far exceeded expectations.
The wins over Tennessee and Kentucky obviously got everyone's attention. They get ranked inside the top 25, and then you get pummeled on the road in Norman. And I got a text from a buddy the other day and said, this Oklahoma game feels like a game where Vanderbilt could get ahead of their skis. Oklahoma's desperate, right? These desperation games for teams, you're realizing, is a trend where maybe they fall like Arkansas against Kentucky. They fall to 1-6 in the SEC. They know they got to have it, and they get it. Similar thing with Oklahoma. They probably had to have that one in the grand scheme of things. But what did those wins over Tennessee and Kentucky do in your mind? Obviously, Jerry Palm has Vanderbilt as an 8 seed right now. Probably be bumped back at, this week. But what did those wins do for this team's NCAA tournament chances?
Oh, they're massive. Just you can't overstate the significance of those 2 victories because they're going to hold up very well. Even if Kentucky is only a 500 team in the SEC, in all likelihood, that's still going to be a quad 1 win for Vanderbilt based on the net rankings. Tennessee showed over the weekend with a victory over Florida that they're not going anywhere either. That's going to be a quad 1 as well. So you added that high end ammunition that it's just not available to a lot of teams in the ACC or the Big East, who are your competitors for at-large bids. Big 10, Big 12, there's a lot of quad 1 opportunities for teams in those conferences who are scraping to put together resumes. But for Vanderbilt to take care of 2 top 10 teams like that, it's tremendous, not just for their NCAA tournament chances, but I think for the buy-in of the fan base and just for the country to see okay, it's been a minute now, but there's something back, at Vanderbilt. The Memorial Magic has returned. So it was, special, I think, for that program. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you caught this, but in the press conference after the Tennessee win, Mark Byington basically said that he had been distraught after the Mississippi State loss at home earlier in the season because he felt like, man, we had all this energy and, I wanted the fans to see what we could be. And boy, those last 2 Saturdays against Tennessee and Kentucky, they really did show, what they could be.
Yeah, they had a solid crowd in that Mississippi State game, and they made some adjustments after that loss, and I think that's been what's most impressive about this staff. That they're a younger staff, but they make those adjustments. After Mississippi State, they played a lot differently in the next game, and after the Alabama loss, they switched up a few things. And in the SEC, if you're not doing that, David, you're gonna get behind the 8 ball, and Byington knows that. So that turns me to Saturday in Norman. Obviously, Vanderbilt fans were fine with the first half. They're up by 4, 40-36, and then Oklahoma goes on a 23-0 run to open the second half, and that was all she wrote. We got a question from a fan in the comment section. Bo says, "Should we be sounding the alarms after Saturday?" What does and again, I think people overreact, right? Tennessee, for example, right? You lose to Kentucky Tuesday, all of a sudden fans change after the win on Saturday over Florida. I think especially in the SEC, you can't get too high or too low. How are you kind of looking at that Oklahoma loss for Vanderbilt? Because it will hurt them in the metrics. It's 30-point loss, but like you said, they still are able to stand on some pretty good wins.
Yeah, if you're into Ken Palm as the evaluation tool, it's going to hurt you in Ken Palm and some of the advanced analytics because of the margin of victory. In the net and in terms of, your NCAA tournament resume, it's still an SEC road loss. It's a quad 1 game. It's not going to kill you. And look at around the league. Look at Mississippi State taking a 27-point loss to Missouri over the weekend. Look at Tennessee earlier in the season, taking a 30-point loss at Florida when they were ranked number 1 in the country. These things are going to happen in this conference this year, and it's about your ability to bounce back. And that's what's so fascinating to me now about the Vanderbilt situation is they got to go to Florida. Well, Florida just got smacked by Tennessee. So now you have these 2 desperate teams that are going to be colliding. That game, I think, will be played with a lot of urgency on both sides because, both coaches, Mark Byington and Todd Golden, have been getting after their guys in whatever practice time they may have had. It's kind of a brutal road trip for Vandy to go to Oklahoma. I assume they're going to stop back in Nashville, right, and then go to Florida. That's like Major College basketball. Yeah. But it's a tough stretch. So no, I think the defense was probably my biggest concern, but I don't necessarily think that it changed my perception of what Vanderbilt can be because we've seen it. We saw it against Kentucky. We saw it against Tennessee, the high end potential of this team. And, look, you just ran into a buzzsaw against Oklahoma, and I think you just kind of got to write it off. There's 18 games in an SEC schedule. You're going to have a couple of bad nights in that mix.
All right, SEC pecking order, right? You've seen a lot of SEC teams this year. Of course, we saw Vanderbilt beat Kentucky and Tennessee, lost to Mississippi State. They eked out a 3-point win over South Carolina. They got Auburn coming up. As you mentioned, they got Florida coming up, got to play Tennessee and Kentucky again, Georgia, Ole Miss. Where does Vanderbilt stand in the SEC in your mind right now? I know after Kentucky, Tennessee, they were, top 6, top 7, but there's so much fluctuation. Where do you see them in the pecking order right now?
Yeah, they're you know how Jimmy Dykes does like his jet or whatever,
Yeah.
where it's like here in front first class we got Duke and Auburn, and then Vanderbilt's in coach. Like they're not in like comfort premier or diamond class. They're in coach, but they're on the jet. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I view them in the league. I would put them in that tier with like Georgia, Texas, and even Oklahoma, right? Like, okay, what would happen if Oklahoma came and played at Memorial, right? Like it might be a totally different game. It just, that's the way it went on Saturday. But I still think Vanderbilt and Oklahoma are kind of in that class. And then below them, you have Arkansas, LSU, South Carolina. So Vandy's on the jet. They're clearly in that middle class of the league. But there's 8 or 9 teams that are still pretty clearly ahead of them in the pecking order. But the fact that they are where they are again is just, it's a testament to Mark Byington and that staff and the roster they put together. Because I think if you'd asked me to pick a record for Vanderbilt before the season in the league, I would have said that 4-14. They might pick off South Carolina or LSU and upset somebody here or there, but this has been far and above what was reasonable to expect from a first-year coach in this conference.
Well, and a lot of the questions now are: is this sustainable? Is this something that next year can be repeated, and 3, 4, 5 years from now? Is this something that you can build upon, or is it a situation like Lamont Paris at South Carolina has a really good year one, and now look at this year, Dennis Gates as well. That has been a trend. Now, again, those are 2 coaches. With Vanderbilt, though, with jobs like North Carolina potentially coming open, Indiana potentially coming open, and then there's another big one I'm forgetting, Virginia. Virginia will likely be open. Byington's name will come up, and has come up a lot, of course, here in the last couple of weeks. In your mind, how good of a job is Vanderbilt compared to, say, a Virginia in the ACC, or even North Carolina, who of course is a blue blood? But like, I'm very interested in, because you've covered college basketball, how good of a job is Vanderbilt right now? How appealing is it in your mind to Mark Byington?
Yeah, I'll tell you, ain't many programs around the country have a weight room like that. I don't know if you've been around that Huber Center. Yeah. It's nice. There's
a basketball goal in the weight room. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't see that. I was like, we getting shots up in between sets or what? Yeah. No, I got to take a little tour of that, and I mean, I'm blown away. I mean, just incredible. There's not 10 programs out there in America that have a better facility right now than what Vanderbilt has. That weight room, it looks like an SEC football weight room, and it's just for their basketball program. I mean, that's really attractive right there. And you gotta remember too, now, after the season that Mark Byington had to James Madison, he had options, right? Like Vanderbilt wasn't the only job, I'm sure, that people were calling him about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think you got to take that into consideration. Take into consideration too the fact that his family seems to like Nashville, right? So everybody loves Nashville. That's a huge draw too. A lot of these college jobs are in smaller towns, and there's just that's an attractive part about the Vanderbilt job right now that I'm sure you guys talk about, but I think that separates it from other jobs in the SEC is that, I mean, by all accounts, Nashville is a top 5, top 10 city nationally, a very attractive, place for a lot of people where they want to live. And so you couch that versus Starkville, Mississippi, Gainesville, Florida. I mean, you can run down the list. These are all fantastic college towns. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, each of them has their own unique vibe, but I mean, Nashville has something unique to offer. And so I think you can't underestimate that, so, and then, like I mentioned, the possibility that a lot of these guys could come back. Jason Edwards could even benefit from the Pavia precedent, because he spent a year at junior college, so he could have multiple years of eligibility in theory. So I think it would have to be something that would just blow you away, to make you leave an SEC job after year one, especially with how good the money is in the SEC now. You got this brand new practice facility. You've got momentum. And let's also talk about the fact that in college basketball, you don't always see coaches jump at the first opportunity. It's not like college football coordinators, they go for a new job every year, right? You can't keep a coordinator for more than 2 years in college football. But high major college basketball, how many times over the years has Scott Drew been offered a better job than the Baylor job? Well, he just stayed and built Baylor into a national title winner. So there's an element of being able to build and create something that I think has appealed to Mark Byington over the years when you look at his previous stops. And I'm sure that's what appeals to him about Vanderbilt. If North Carolina calls, okay, you got to take the call, right?
Yeah.
But no, I think there's a lot to like about where Vandy's at.
I know we've got some people on our board freaking out about that, so I figured I'd throw that out there to you. Speaking of building and creating something, that's what Diego Pavia, Tim Beck, and Jerry Kill did last year, and I will still say the most, maybe not the best. Like James Franklin won 9 games back-to-back seasons, not in today's SEC though, and he didn't beat number 1 Alabama, and didn't go on the road the next week and beat Kentucky. I think this was the most impactful, and you could say best season in Vanderbilt football history, just in terms of the wins and the notoriety. In your mind, is that I asked you a little bit in basketball, is this repeatable? Is it sustainable? In your mind, is there a sense that, okay, Pavia, the secret's out? Like, he's a guy that's not the biggest guy, or are you in the mold of, no, this guy's a winner and he's going to find a way? Because I'm interested. I think people, because I've heard from some people saying, well, I don't know. They have a year of film on him, but at the same time, he's proven, like even in that Tennessee game, it ended up finding ways to have success against a really good front seven. How do you look at Pavia and Vanderbilt next year?
Yeah, I think it's another bowl team probably because you get him back. Yeah, the durability, I think, is always going to be a question with an undersized QB who takes 20 plus shots a game from the opposing defense. That's, it's a scary situation to kind of have your entire operation revolving around him, which it very much did at Vanderbilt this year. But no, I don't necessarily buy into the idea that a year of film is going to help opposing defenses stop him because you knew what he was going to do, right? Even by late September, it was pretty clear, what he was capable of. And yet he still was able to torch Alabama and lead Vanderbilt to success that most people didn't see coming. So I don't think the fact that people will have scouted him before or played against him before is going to have a huge impact on that. I think he's wiggly, he's physical, he's evasive, he can make the throws. So no, I think Diego Pavia's presence on the Vanderbilt roster does give them a pretty good chance to follow this thing up with another bowl appearance.
David, really appreciate it. Looking forward to the rest of this college basketball season. Looking forward to maybe having you on around tournament time. I know you'll probably be in Nashville for the SEC action, so looking forward to it, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, quick trivia question for you. Do you know what the county seat of Robertson County is?
The county seat of Robertson County.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay. See, I'm living up in Springfield right now, Springfield, Tennessee. So kind of in the middle. It's like the last untouched part of the Nashville metropolitan boom. We're kind of enjoying being in Middle Tennessee right now. So it's easy for me to get down to Memorial, easy to get down to Bridgestone. So, hope to cross paths with you down there for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like it's either, for people that have recently moved, it's either Smyrna, which is not quite Murfreesboro, but close to Nashville. Like it's either Smyrna, Springfield, Franklin, but there's all kinds of places people are discovering to move to Nashville.
Well, we tell people we're in Springfield, and then they're like, "Oh, Spring Hill, yeah." And it's like, no, we're in
not
Springfield.
That far down. Yeah,
it's its own thing. But anyway, yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Absolutely appreciate it, David. That's David Cobb from right here at 24/7 Sports. Does a really good job covering college basketball and college football for CBS Sports. He's written a lot of really good pieces this football season, as well as heading into this basketball season. So check out his work. I do want to get to a couple of chat questions here. Again, Joey and I got to it in the Oklahoma game. It was disappointing, but at the end of the day, you got to turn around and pick yourself up. And David mentioned it. This road trip's brutal. I mean, you go out west to Oklahoma, And then you got to turn around. It was, like you said, I assume they got back to Nashville and then going down to Gainesville today, I would imagine, flying down there. So just a brutal stretch. And I think what you look at is Vanderbilt to be more competitive tomorrow. I mean, that's what you're looking at. Be more competitive. If they lose, they lose, but you can't lose by 30 again. I think the rest of the season, those are damaging losses. And quite frankly, that was embarrassing. That was embarrassing for this team. And I'm really interested to see how they respond. This is and Joey talked about it. This is a fulcrum type game for this team, where it can either continue to go downhill or they can really turn things around and get back to playing to their identity. I think they will. But again, you're playing at Florida, a top 10 team that's really good. And then you turn around Saturday and host Texas and then host Auburn next week. So that's what's on tap for Vanderbilt basketball. Justin asks, was Saturday simply an example of all preseason concerns being exposed in a single game? I think that's a good way of putting it. I really do. I think, number one, I don't think they got bullied in the paint, but their depth showed. Like when Hoggard and Edwards were out, especially at the same time, Huffman and Tanner and Collins, there's pressure on them, and so I think the lack of depth, positional depth really showed up. Not having Carey for the first half, I thought hurt, even though they ended up leading by 4 at the half. They got it back for the second half. I thought their lack of offensive skill. Now, again, Edwards is skilled, right? Carey is skilled. Carey was not himself on Saturday, which was weird. And then Nickel, he's 0 for 4 from 3. Like, that's going to happen. But when all of it happens at once, right, and Magnon, fouls out, like, I'm with you, Justin. I think Saturday was definitely the worries, the preseason worries of this team wrapped up in one night. And, I don't think it happens again. Now, maybe there's another 20-point loss down the road, but that's a bad 30-point loss that, like David said, will hurt them in the metrics. So, I would say yes to that. I think that was pretty much everything happening at once. Clay, do you think Byington holds his own against SEC coaches? Yeah, I think Byington's a really good coach. I think he has the respect of SEC coaches. Like David said, Vanderbilt was not the only school that came after him. West Virginia, I think, was interested. Virginia, a little late to the party, right? I think now they're interested, but, we'll see what happens there. But, yeah, I mean, he's a really good coach, and his X's and O's, his defensive prowess. I mean, this is an all around, team, and I think it gets forgotten with his culture, the culture side of his coaching. That this team's culture is really strong, and you see it in the locker rooms after games, and you haven't seen it really any meltdowns. I mean, every now and then you see some from Hoggard and Edwards, and kind of the alphas on the team, but you don't. I don't think there's any problem. Any problems that are being created on this team, at least, on the interior. But this is when they got to rally together and come back strong and bounce back against Florida on Tuesday night. There's no other option. The boats are burning for this basketball team. And again, we'll see where they land in the bracketology, whether it's Jerry Palm or Joe Lunardi. But Florida tomorrow night, 6:00 on the SEC network. And then Saturday, against Texas at home. That'll be a noon tip-off against Texas. So looking forward to that one. Thanks to David Cobb from CBS Sports, college basketball, college football writer. Does a great job covering those two sports. This podcast has always been free. We want to keep it that way. Here's how you can help us do that. Give us a review and a 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. If you're listening and haven't subscribed to Vandy247.com yet, please do. Subscribe to our Vandy 24/7 YouTube channel as well. Like this video, comment, get your comments rolling. Also, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.